Good morning, Excellencies, distinguished guests, colleagues and friends. A very warm welcome to EBRD's new headquarters. I'm Christoph Denk. I'm Managing Director here at EBRD for Policy, Strategy and Delivery. I know that many of you have participated in the Ukraine Recovery Conference, which concluded yesterday, just across the river here. I don't know how you felt about it. I thought it was very intense, but I also came away with really a sense of unity, of determination, and of common purpose in the face of Russia's full-scale war of aggression against Ukraine. So URC 2023 is over. But as a legendary German football coach once proclaimed, nach dem Spiel ist vor dem Spiel. That means after the match is before the match. So that's a bit like that for URC as well. And this year's URC had a strong focus on mobilizing the private sector for Ukraine's recovery and reconstruction. And it was really clear that a vigorous recovery will require strong fundamentals, strong institutions, rule of law, continued fight against corruption, and corporate governance reforms. These will be critical for EU integration as well. And recovery and EU integration will reinforce each other. For next year's URC in Berlin, the German development minister, Svenja Schulze, put down a first marker yesterday, placing a strong emphasis on civil society. And it is Ukraine's civil society that demands further progress in combating corruption and strengthening integrity, really rebuilding a new country, a country for whose freedom Ukrainians fight so bravely and successfully. So the demand for transparency and accountability is coming from within Ukraine as much as from Ukraine's international partners. And at EBRD, we are excited to be partnering for our event today with organizations that are at the forefront of promoting anti-corruption and integrity. The German Marshall Fund of the United States, USAID, the RISE Coalition, Transparency International Ukraine and UK, and the Open Contracting Partnership. Thank you all very much. Just a few quick facts about EBRD and Ukraine in a telegraphic style. We have worked in Ukraine for 30 years. We have invested cumulatively about 18 billion euro in 500 projects. Importantly, we have 170 Ukrainian staff. We continue to invest heavily during the war as well, helping Ukraine to keep the real economy going, supporting resilience, livelihoods, and human capital. We are also taking significant risk on our own balance sheet, but we do so with the strong support from our shareholders and donors who are sharing the risk with us. Promoting good governance, integrity, and transparency is a defining feature of our work. It's built into our financing operations, particularly in the work with state-owned enterprises, and we'll talk about that later today as well. Our support for Ukraine goes beyond financing as well. With our partners of the European Commission, we set up the Ukraine Reforms Architecture in 2016. It's a program with 200 consultants in key parts of the Ukrainian administration to support the Ukrainian government on key reforms. And it has also helped during the war in helping the government with the requirements for recovery and early reconstruction planning, as well as EU integration. We are very grateful to our donors for their support for this program as well. We also set up the Business Ombudsman Institution, and we are very active in promoting e-procurement and other digital solutions, all important instruments for strengthening transparency and combating corruption. Enough about us, and to conclude, achieving a successful reconstruction will be a whole society endeavor. This is why I'm very happy that we are partnering for this event with so many great civil society organizations, which will also be key actors in ensuring that reconstruction investment is spent well, transparently, and efficiently. Let me now pass the floor to Her Excellency Dame Melinda Simmons, the UK Ambassador to Ukraine. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. It's really good to be here, although I have to start with an apology. I'm actually flying back to Warsaw and then into Ukraine this morning. So I'm going to have to leave shortly after my comments, and I'm sorry about that. But I did at least want to be able to come here and be a part of this, even just for the first session, because I think that the issues that you are discussing are so fundamental. We're all a bit tired at the end of a quite stressful and very busy, but very, very productive week of the Ukraine Recovery Conference. And I think it's worth remembering that the conference itself and the official pre-events were designed to focus on three themes. And they were the role and the potential role of the private sector, and how international support could help enable and leverage that private investment. And then what building back better looks like for Ukraine, and what it really requires, the hard work that it requires in practice. So throughout the conference and our discussions with the government of Ukraine, we have always been clear that transparency and accountability and integrity are key cross-cutting principles that are so essential to enable new businesses to invest and to allow Ukraine to achieve that building back better. That's why I think this event today is as important as it is. The question of how you apply those principles, like integrity and transparency in practice, is so important to Ukraine's future, as are some of the issues that you'll be discussing here today, including digital reconstruction management systems and difficult but important reforms like corporate governance of state-owned enterprises. As British Ambassador to Ukraine, I've probably spent more time on these issues in my whole 4 years than anything else. And I can assure both our Ukrainian and our international partners alike that those will continue to be a priority for the UK. In fact, actually, I remember doing an interview about a year ago in Ukraine in which someone asked me, when will judicial reform be done? And I said, my predecessor worked on it, I'm working on it, and I'm absolutely confident that several of my successors will be working on it. It is a long-term endeavor. We will continue to do this work. We'll continue to be supporting anti-corruption institutions. We will continue to support judicial reform. We will continue to support reforms in key areas like energy. Even in the last 18 months of the invasion, we've been continuing to work on this. Even as the UK's military and humanitarian aid to Ukraine has surged as much as it has since Russia invaded, we have kept that focus on these issues. And my team is still working as hard on judicial reform, on electoral legislation, on procurement reform. We've provided new support, including on digital reconstruction management, and we really understand that all of that isn't just important to Ukraine's present, but also to its future. So I really just want to finish by assuring you that the UK will continue to do all that we can to advance and apply principles of integrity and transparency in recovery and in reconstruction, as hard as those messages are. And they are hard messages to give, not just to government, but to civil society, to fighters, to people who think we should be focusing on the fight right now. But the truth is that these principles are part of the fight right now. And we'll work hand in hand with all of those who are looking to build Ukraine back in the truest sense of that phrase, build back better. Thank you again for this invitation. I wish you all a productive day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Excellency. And I found it particularly encouraging that really the work on reforms is going on even during these times of war. Let me hand over now to Maria Longhi, the U.S. Assistance Coordinator for Europe and Eurasia at the U.S. State Department.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the EBRD for planning this conference on the heels of the Ukraine Recovery Conference. It is been a great week, I think, for Ukraine, as well as for everyone supporting Ukraine's recovery. And I think today's events will only build on those discussions. And so thank you, and actually safe travels back if you're running out right now. As we have all witnessed this week and over the last 18 months, Ukrainians have shown the world their extraordinary resilience in the face of Russia's aggression. They have shown us their ability to adapt, rebuild, and modernize, even amidst a war. And even as the war is going on and the work that we are all doing on the military front, we need to focus at the same time on how Ukraine is going to build the peace, build its future integrated into Europe. And I think that remains a very high U.S. priority, is looking to the future as well as to helping win the war. We have seen this week the historic commitments that governments, organizations, and companies are making to support Ukraine, and it's very impressive, as the last couple of days have shown. The United States will continue to work with Ukraine's government and with our allies and partners to ensure a broad-based recovery that catalyzes the tremendous resources that Ukraine has, most notably Ukrainians themselves, and offers opportunities for the private sector partners. To help us achieve these objectives, Secretary of State Blinken announced yesterday, 2 days ago, more than $1.3 billion in new assistance. Working with our Congress to support Ukraine's recovery needs, we intend to provide over $790 million of that to new economic assistance, including some critical infrastructure, to help enhance trade with Europe and jumpstart Ukraine's economic recovery. We also intend to invest about $522 million of that in new energy assistance focused on energy transformation and reconstruction. This will help decentralize Ukraine's energy grid and power generation and support critical reforms necessary to create a cleaner, greener, and more independent grid connected to Europe's energy market. But as was recognized repeatedly this week, assistance is not all that is needed for Ukraine's reconstruction and economic recovery. A revived economy and improved business climate for investment will require strong anti-corruption measures, good governance, and as already been said, rule of law, which will take a while, but we are committed to working on it. We must continue to support Ukraine in achieving this larger transformation, one that includes strong institutions to attract more private sector investment, lay the foundation for recovery, and support Ukraine's eventual EU integration. The U.S. would like to be an enabler of investment, working with you to help Ukraine create the conditions necessary to mobilize private sector support. While Ukraine will ultimately be responsible for leading its recovery process, we must support its effort to adopt a strong reform agenda, encourage an innovative digital transformation, and strengthen the business climate essential to economic resilience. We need to demonstrate, not just through words, but through actions, how committed we are to supporting Ukraine's full integration with Europe and partnership with fellow democracies around the world. Thank you, and I look forward to watching and listening to the discussions today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria. That was really very encouraging, and I thought the American presence also at the conference was a really very strong signal. Let me now pass on the floor to Norman Eisen, a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution and former ambassador of the United States of America. He will also frame our discussion and be our master of ceremony. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Denk. Thanks, Ambassador Simmons. Safe travels, Coordinator Longy. And I want to thank again, Christophe named them all, the many partners who made this event possible. Particular tip of the hat to our GMF colleagues, my co-author, Josh Rudolph. We'll talk about our report today for being the driving force, and of course the EBRD for hosting. And the event today is entitled Building a Transparent and Accountable Ukraine, the Key Steps to Recovery. And it will build on the lessons of the past decade, really past century plus of reconstruction that we have learned the importance of promoting Ukraine's financial integrity, transparency, and efficiency to attract international investment, both for the benefit of Ukraine, but also to assure that Ukraine's allies and partners around the world, both in government, in the private sector, in civil society, know that every dollar and every euro will be well spent when it is invested. We are very fortunate that we'll be featuring Ukraine's many international partners officials from government, donor agencies, civil society, who will highlight how Ukraine can prioritize digitalization and anti-corruption. And you'll hear, as profound as the problems are, how Ukraine has evolved. USAID refers to them as a world-class or gold standard set of remedies in response to those very profound challenges. Our topic and our timing could not be more opportune. Over the past 2 days, over 1,000 individuals from across the international community convened for the Ukraine Recovery Conference. Our goal today is to discuss how we can ensure that transparency, integrity, and accountability in Ukraine's reconstruction is baked in from the very beginning, and with cost estimates running into the many hundreds of billions of dollars, the more, the better. With that amount of money on the table and the eyes of the world on Ukraine as it launches its military counteroffensive in full force, it is critical that the counteroffensive against oligarchy and corruption also succeed. So we'll be hearing from experts on 4 panels about what Ukraine and its allies can do to help achieve these shared goals. I'll give brief remarks before each panel to introduce the topic. Here is a quick preview. We'll start with top Ukraine, UK, and EU officials on Ukraine's progress at combating corruption over the past decade and during the war. Really remarkable progress. Josh and I refer to it as hero's journey in this paper, and next steps for post-war recovery and reconstruction. Then the second panel will discuss the strategic importance of digitization. I had to practice that over and over again in my jet lag state. Digitization in achieving transparency and accountability, and the critical role of Ukrainian civil society in this work. We'll take a 20-minute refreshment break after that so you can stretch your legs. We may contract the refreshment break a little bit to stay on our timetable, so you'll need to drink your coffee and tea briskly. Then panel 3, the governance of state-owned enterprises, hugely important part of the economy in Ukraine. And finally, panel 4 will discuss the importance of transparency and integrity in sustaining U.S. support for Ukraine, and we'll really get down to the nitty-gritty of specifics that we believe, and that Ukrainian civil society and government anti-corruption leaders believe necessary to continue this progress, this hero's journey. Just a couple of housekeeping remarks for speakers in the room. Please remember to use the tabletop push-to-talk mics so you can be heard here, and we have a large online audience as well. Each panel has a designated focal point who will relay audience questions, and we have left room for audience questions, and we want audience questions. So prepare your questions as you hear our panelists. All right, with that, I'd like to turn to our first panel. Panel 1 is going to discuss Ukraine's progress in implementing anti-corruption reforms since the 2014 Revolution of Dignity. And as you will hear, I think most everybody in the room knows, it has been truly remarkable. Ukrainian civil society has innovated cutting-edge transparency systems, founded an independent suite of specialized anti-corruption agencies, restructured whole economic sectors, and decentralized governance out to the regions. But much work remains to be done if Ukraine's reconstruction is to be characterized by integrity.